Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, back to talk more comics. Kind of on my road to finding my way back to my usual content. Like I've talked about in other videos, my confidence in my channel and myself and what I talk about on my channel has been kind of severely shattered. And I feel very little confidence in talking about what I normally talk about. Part of that has to do with my camera, but part of it, the rest of it has to do with me. And so I've gone back to what I am very comfortable talking about. Never had a hard time talking about it, even if I'm not, you know, everyone's cup of tea about it, and that's comic books. And since I've been recollecting the past 4 years, I've been learning a lot. Remember talk about since today's comic book day, and I don't know if I'm even going to get my comics in the mail today, which would be a real bummer because Powers of 10 number 6 comes out today. I figured at the very least I'd put a comic book review out there, and I'm going to talk about 2 of my first comics I ever bought. And to do that, you know, a little context is I started reading comics when I was a freshman in high school. And well, I think we're back. Again, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like when I edit this and look at this, my camera is already flaking out on me where I can't even pause it. So it's really freaking out. So I started reading comics back in 1989 when I was a freshman in high school, and I was part of that group. You know, we liked each other, but nobody else liked us because we were nerds. We were into things, you know, but I was just experiencing them for the first time. Like I knew about comic books. I knew who Batman was. Batman was like my favorite movie back then. I knew who Spider-Man was. I knew of the X-Men, and I knew that there was a guy with claws that were metal that I just was like, who the hell is that? Why? When can I figure out that? So some of my friends had already collected comics, and I was reading some of theirs at the time because I didn't have. I had like my first. This was like right before my first job. And so I was reading other people's stuff. So I was reading like X-Men, you know, like the Inferno run and stuff like that, and a little bit of Todd McFarlane's Amazing Spider-Man. And I had gone to the comic shop in Zion, Illinois. I tried finding it. I don't think it's there anymore. There's another comic book store or a bookstore in that area, but I don't think it's the same one. I would love it. I need to go back there and check it out and see what's going on. But little comic book shop I remember in my head was very much like it was a comic book shop, but it was like slash an antique store slash a, you know, like kind of a not like a Salvation Army kind of, what am I looking for here, like a Goodwill kind of place, more like a secondhand store, you know, like secondhand books, things like that. But there was a new comic area. I didn't know any of this because the way it was set up, like I since it was the first time I'd been in a comic book shop, I didn't know what the new comics were and what the old comics were. And so when I finally went in there, like he had, like looking back on it now, he had a lot of back issues sitting there for like a good long while. Because one of the first books I picked up, because I was all about the art. I didn't really understand the stories yet. I didn't know what I was jumping into. I just wanted to find something that looked cool. And so for the very first issue that I picked up, this I believe is the very first comic book I ever bought. And I bought it strictly from the cover. And I didn't really know much else about it except the very, very basic stuff. And we're talking about Fantastic Four, number 343 from August of 1990. So even though, like I said, I've been reading comics since 1989, when I got there, this was like in the back issues. So I don't think I started, or this might have been new. I don't know, because the next issue that I picked up was definitely a back issue. But we're talking about Fantastic Four number 343. This, I believe, was at the end of Walter Simonson's Fantastic Four run, and this was part of two-part issue called Nuke Busters. And what's great about this, okay, so it's October 10th, published October 10th, 1990. Okay, yeah. So this actually is a perfect issue to talk about because it pretty much encapsulates when I picked it up what the Fantastic Four were all about. Even like a lot of things didn't make sense to me, like why is Ben Grimm a guy now? Like right there. Why is there a woman thing? And all this stuff. But their interactions with each other were so much like what when people describe the Fantastic Four as a family. It's all so in here. But it's also really dated because this is like, around the fall of the Berlin Wall and still the Cold War going on a little bit here, which kind of feels like almost dated when it came out because in 1990, they're still trying to make it like we were about to blow each other up. But it also makes sense because in this world, the normal universe. This was also what I didn't know, my introduction to the multiverse. Because in this issue, they think they're back home from another one of their, usual universe traveling trips. They're back on the 616, but really they're back in a world where Stalin is still around. Dan Quayle is president because George Bush died. And so things are just not what they seem. But like in this, we're discussing like laundry. Like right at the beginning of this, we're talking about laundry. Like, what, just whose job is it? And, Sue taking care of it herself, like a woman's work. But they go into this whole thing about like what, this whole dynamic is great. And they talk about, he's like, Reed even is bringing science into this. Like, talking about how to do the laundry and Reed trying to science it up. And not working. Like, not everything can be solved really with like just Reed's like science stuff. We also get like, they're trying to work on Johnny, who's like been under the control of Nebula, which, holy crap, like Nebula we're talking about in here. But we slowly but surely, this version of the Thing, who's played by, the name of the character is Sherry, and I can't remember her last name. I read it yesterday, I had it looked up. But Ben's like a human now, which I still don't know what happened in that because, like I said, I haven't read this issue in a really long time. But she starts noticing things that are off in the universe, things that aren't where they're supposed to be, and so she goes to find Reed, tells him, hey, like look for stuff that's different because there's some weird things going on. And at the same time, we got like at the White House, right? So it's no glitch, Mr. Like, they're talking to, like, DEFCON 4. Like, the Russians and the Americans are really, like, this is like Watchmen. Like, they're going to, like, start bombing each other. And it's, like, the dialogue in here is so hilarious because it's, like I said, it's 1990. But it's like, it's no glitch, Mr. President. It looks as though the Russians have disconnected the hotline from their end. And I think we better make darn sure we're not caught with our pants down. Satellite intelligence shows massed concentrations of Russian and Eastern Bloc troops along the greater German border. It doesn't look good. Bring the armed forces to DEFCON 1, full alert. If Stalin wants a showdown here and now, we'll give him one. So, wow. 1990, October. Oh, in 2 days. Actually, one day. It'll be, let's see, 2010. 29 years ago that this comic book came out. Crazy. That's an interesting little tidbit. And so slowly but surely they all start to see that things aren't the way they're supposed to be. Things aren't where they're at because they're looking at it. And like Ben's fighting out through sports teams because that's his thing. But everybody soon figures out that they're not in the right place. They're not on their Earth. And then Alicia Masters comes over, and she's like all over Ben, except it's not Ben, it's Sherry. And she's supposed to be with Johnny Storm in our world, so she thinks she's with Ben. But she finds out that the Ben in this universe, or from our universe that's here now, is a human now. It's all sorts of crazy. And they switch over to Russia, where they're talking about, are we prepared? Who's going to shoot first? Also, like some of the ads in here are just great to look at. just for like a fully, like trip down memory lane for anybody. Um, like there's the Nick Club card in here. There's the original top-down Uncanny X-Men game, Uncanny Action. Let me tell you something, man. When I rented this game from the grocery store that was in the town that I was in, I felt so ripped off. I was like, what is this? This top-down thing? Like, I held a grudge against, like, Nintendo for a while for, like, making this crappy X-Men game. Um, so every deciding that we get like the exposition of what happened, that the U.S. and Russia are at each other's throats, have been for years, ever since the Russians crossed the Oder River in 1944 and occupied Germany after the war. So basically, Russia didn't stop. It's like the worst fears of like America. Like Russia just started rolling over places. And since they were using German technology, they were able to keep up with us in the space race, and Joseph Stalin's still alive because of machines are keeping him alive, kind of like a Walt Disney kind of thing. I don't know. But look at this. This was also like a 2-page spread for Bonk's Adventure on TurboGrafx 16. If you knew anybody that had a TurboGrafx 16, holy crap. I don't know if I've ever... I played Bonk's Adventure on somebody's. I was at their house, but we never had one of those. And it's another cool little detail remembering this from way back then. We played a character who used his head to like take people out. Also, so they're trying to figure out, like, they find one of this universe's Reed's caches where he was planning on how to stop World War III. And so they get all these weapons together. They're not tested yet. And they decide to go and intervene in the world's, like, almost destruction. They're about to kill each other. They even have their own, another spaceship that they get this all done in really quickly. I didn't appreciate Simonson's art back then, but I really do now. And we even have this kind of like cool montage where you could see this in like a fucking Michael Bay movie, right? Where it's like they're wheeling up their planes, and there's all the little dialogue, and there's Dan Quayle saying basically like, may God have mercy on us all. I think that he even says that, and may God have mercy on us all. That's right. It's exactly what he says. And so this was the first part of a two-parter. They're firing up their rockets. Everybody's getting ready to shoot at each other. And then like right next to this, right? Arachnophobia. I saw Arachnophobia probably 3 or 4 times at the theater. I realize now it's not a very good movie, but at the time it was like Jeff Daniels and afraid of spiders, afraid of these giant tarantulas, and John Goodman played the kind of wacky exterminator. It was actually, like, for the time, I loved that movie. So anyway, it basically is them getting in the middle. They got these great big guns that they're getting ready to try out to stop them from killing each other. I am gonna go pick up the second part because I remember buying like the first few like issues of Fantastic Four after buying this one. But I also wanted to bring up Stan Lee's Soapbox, all the way from October, and I'm sure this was in a ton of issues, but I figured I'd read it since it's like almost 30 years old. And so for Stan Lee's Soapbox, it says, "Hi, heroes. Want to know why comic book column writers get gray? Try this on for size. A few issues back, I told you to watch for Into Thin Air, the new Larry Cohen movie in which some of your favorite bullpenners played cameo roles. So far, so good, right? Larry just told me the title was changed to Ambulance. Naturally, by the time he told me, the Soapbox column touting the other title had already been printed. Well, to avoid any future foul-ups, just watch for a new thriller which may or may not be called Ambulance, featuring my co-star Eric Roberts." Co-star? Well, I shared the screen with him for almost 30 whole seconds, and in case you're wondering, yeah, he's pretty good too. By the way, have you noticed the many new comic book titles and companies popping up? Recently, someone said he was sorry we're having all this competition. So this is right around Image Comics starting, I think, and Valiant and places like that. I told him to save his sympathy. I mean, competition is what it's all about. Nothing like the sound of another comics company breathing down our necks to make us work even harder. And who benefits by it all? Hey, who else but you, the readers, you, who keep us alive by shelling out your shekels for our mags. If we give you what you want, you'll buy us. If not, it's goodbye, Charlie, and that's the way it should be. You've been wonderfully loyal to us over the years, and no words of mine can fully express our gratitude. That's why I make you this pledge. We'll never stop busting our chops to give you the best we've got, to prove worthy of your support, to excite you, to amuse you, and for better or worse, to always level with you. Fact is, there's no way we'll ever forget our earliest adage, we're nothing without you. Excelsior. Well, that's actually really kind of poignant. It's actually really kind of poignant, seeing as the shape of Marvel and DC are right now. Maybe they should be reading some of Old Sand's soapboxes like I just did. So anyway, that was Fantastic Four number 343. I'm really glad I rebought it. I've been kicking myself, and I guess I'm still in the middle of a midlife crisis because I'm doing all this stuff. But now we're going to talk about what I believe is like also definitely, I know it's definitely one of the first comic books I ever bought, and we're talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 327 from mid-December of 1989. So this was on the back issues, but when I was looking at covers, I didn't know what Acts of Vengeance was at the time. I just saw Spider-Man flying with like some glowing thing coming off his hand, and he's fighting Magneto from the X-Men. I'm like, what is happening here? And I also really loved the art by Erik Larsen, who at the time I didn't know who Erik Larsen was. But you can definitely tell that this was where they were transitioning between Todd McFarlane leaving to do Spider-Man number 1 and Erik taking over as Amazing Spider-Man, and how you could tell in this that they were trying to keep the feel of McFarlane's books because the way some of the pictures are in here, and Larsen finding his own style, but at the same time keeping kind of what Todd was doing, so it felt like they weren't jarring the audience, which is kind of strange because in other books they didn't mind like completely changing art styles for other books. So it kind of shows how important Amazing Spider-Man at this time was for Marvel, being like Spider-Man being one of the tentpole flagship characters. And so what I didn't know was that in this, Spider-Man had just gotten cosmic powers in Spectacular Spider-Man number 158. And so this was just a little brief time period where he was fighting characters that he didn't normally fight. In the next issue, Todd McFarlane returns, I believe for the last issue that he did, where it's him versus Joe Fixit Hulk, which I do own also, and I will review eventually. Which is just a fun issue. So it's like he was fighting like characters like Graviton, people that aren't. That's what Acts of Vengeance was. There was a bunch of the villains coming together and then kind of fighting off type to try to throw the heroes off. It was almost like the plot in Old Man Logan, where the villains all got together and organized and did things right. That's like kind of like what if Acts of Vengeance worked, in a way. And so I feel like that's kind of the basis of Old Man Logan's whole universe, is what if Acts of Vengeance actually worked in a way. But we see him like now, like Spider-Man using his new powers, that he can now change like the chemical on a basic level on its atomic structure, like even his webbing can like turn into like cool DNA. We also see that he's definitely taking up McFarlane's look of Mary Jane, which is very much like a supermodel, full on like sexualized Mary Jane. Like this Mary Jane, I had the hots for this Mary Jane because she was, look, I'm not gonna edit myself here. She was stacked. I mean, she was like the epitome of hot back then. She was like Cindy Crawford on acid, or not on acid. She was smart. She was drawn smart. I was 14, 15 years old. You do the math. So Peter, as usual, is struggling. She's talking about, with his responsibilities as always, and Mary Jane's telling him, you got to do your thing. And we get the gang of villains that are talking about stuff. We get Kingpin, Magneto, Doctor Doom, all working together, but also all working for their own like gains. Look at here, we got the advertisement for Sky Shark. So Magneto decides that he's going to go after Spider-Man because he thinks he's actually a mutant, that these new powers that he's developing are signs of a mutant of a person who's developing their like new powers late would make them a mutant. It's a little thin because he's already had spider powers, so like You know, like, does Magneto know that he's not a mutant already, or why isn't he thinking maybe he is a mutant and we just never asked? I don't know. But we get into this one kind of storyline that is a little just like weird, which makes this page a little more hilarious because Operation Wolf was like a Nintendo game that I used to play at the arcade all the time, and it was really great. It definitely took. It was like a first-person shooter game with you had a machine gun on it, and when you got it home, it wasn't as fun. But anyway, Flash Thompson's a boxer in this, and he's less of a bully now, but he's still kind of an idiot. Definitely not like, I mean, if you don't like Flash Thompson now, you probably would have really hated him back here in this time period. But Magneto's out looking for Spider-Man. And as you can tell from like these panels here, right? Like right here, or sorry, these right here. Those are definitely the way Todd was drawing things, especially like that picture with just Magneto's eyes. Like a lot of this just feels like Eric trying to copy, in a way, McFarlane. A lot of this stuff looks like the way McFarlane was drawing Spider-Man. But Magneto just sits on a park bench waiting for Spider-Man in his full costume. It's very weird. And Peter's like trying to figure out his powers, so he goes to like a garbage dump where he starts like trashing cars and blowing cars up, which is also like really cool drawings. Even though like we start to see in this era where Spider-Man and webbing and everything is just kind of like moving physically, like just very strange. It looks cool, but it just, again, Todd drew a lot of webs and a lot of just weird angles. And we also see Mary Jane on her like acting gig where she's very good at her job, maybe a little too good. And meanwhile, this is when Magneto makes his move. Is able to like lift barges up now. He can fly. He's still able to dodge. It's a really cool action piece. And I mean, again, when are you ever going to see Spider-Man straight up fighting Magneto? When? When are you ever going to do that? How is this issue not like way more like valuable? But again, just a really great action piece, really great drawing. And unfortunately, what I feel like I like Eric Larson a lot. I definitely feel like the longer he was on Amazing Spider-Man, which, to be honest with you, wasn't very long before Mark Bagley took over and really did get in the character, because I'm not a big fan of Mark Bagley at all. But while we had it, Eric Larson did his best to keep the art up for this book before he went to Savage Dragon. But I just really, really dig this story. It's just a lot of fun. Him turning like his webbing, very Green Lantern-esque here, where he turns his webbing into a bat and smacks Magneto. Again, for like 14, 15-year-old me, this was just amazing to look at. And I just remember being so stunned. And it also got me into drawing again for a good long while, where it's like, look at that. That is just cool, man. Also, like, his power is so powerful that he actually makes Magneto feel through his like magnetic shield. And this right here, I mean, come on, forget about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cereal for a second there. But that picture there of Magneto is straight up McFarlane-esque. Like, this was them trying to stick to the McFarlane way of the way things looked. But Magneto realizes that Spider-Man's not a mutant and that there's too many different powers. And so, also this advertised the Hulk event, the 4-issue Hulk event called Countdown, which is another story we'll probably be talking about. But yeah, Magneto takes off. And Peter comes home, and he's just still trying to figure out his powers, and that's when we find out that in next issue we get a visitor from Vegas, which is Joe Fixit at the bottom there. And that's these two comics, and I just wanted to take a trip down memory lane and talk about some of these older comics and how like it's just kind of funny looking back this long away. Like, it doesn't feel long to me until somebody points out or like I see something that makes me feel like the age of something. But I hope you guys like me talking about these. This is just a fun little thing to do to make sure I get some content up on the channel since I've strayed from my normal content. Not to say that comic books aren't my normal content, because they always have been a part of the channel. Just I took a way long extended leave, and it took me to basically lose all my confidence in my other videos and my ability to talk about movies and TV to come back to comics. And now I'm really happy that when I do get back to what I normally do, comics will play a bigger role than they did before. So if you liked this little video, please hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and enjoy the fun with the rest of us. We're about 69 away from 1,000, so any help you guys can give the channel would be great. Otherwise, this is Robert Smirking Gun Review saying hopefully we'll be getting our Powers of X in the mail today so we can do a review on that. Otherwise, have a great day, keep reading comics, and we'll see you next time. Bye.